Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Yes, it's that hour of the day where I come on and we talk about those shows, those comics, those things that have got us talking. Like, for instance, last night's finale of Book of Boba Fett. Now, I'm not going to talk about it too much here. We're not going to get into it. Don't want to hit spoilers yet because a lot of you probably haven't had a chance to watch it. Unlike me, who was awake at 1 a.m. going, who the hell's in the back to tank? Rewind. Yeah. Make sure you stay for a mid-credit scene. So just so you know, it's not a huge one, but it is important enough for a character. Last night's Book of Boba Fett, we'll talk about it all day tomorrow, but I just want to say, quick opinion on it. The show has issues. It did some really weird things that I think people wouldn't have complained about if they had called it the Battle for Tatooine. But because they called it the Book of Boba Fett, and Boba Fett took a different course, he wasn't quite what we expected him to be on some points. Yeah.
I'm not going to be here tomorrow. Can I chime in on this?
Sure.
If they had called it The Legend of Fennec Shand, I think it would have been a different story too.
Well, she was barely in 2 episodes too.
But it's one of those things is that it's not a Boba Fett story. It's an everybody else story, and Boba Fett is just kind of...
It's the battle for Tatooine.
The axle in the middle of the wheel, right?
Yeah.
So, it's one of those things that I'm not 100%... Yeah. I still am not sure I liked the show. I loved moments of it.
Yes.
And we could talk about that if we were going to talk about last night's episode. But since we're not, we'll move on.
Yes. Because you're going to come on in a minute anyway, and we're going to talk about... we got 2 things to talk about today. This is a cram-packed week. I mean, we had so much going on. We got the finale of Book of Boba Fett. We've got the penultimate episode of Peacemaker. We have Vox Machina. We have the release of Reacher on Amazon Prime, which has already been renewed for a second season. I mean, there is just a ton of stuff going on. Plus, we got movie news coming out, everything. I mean, it's just, the guy who played in The Heights and was in Hamilton just signed on to be in the Ironheart series, which is one of those that we keep forgetting. It's like we're looking at Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, Secret Wars, Armor Wars. Oh yeah, they're going to do an Ironheart series too. So you got all that going on. There's just a ton. We're getting ready for the Batman, which is coming up. They're doing a lot of press for Batman. We still have Morbius coming out on April 1st. We've got Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. And there is a ton of rumors flying around about that and how there's going to be a bunch of cameos in that involving people who either played iterations of Marvel characters previously or were supposed to play. The big one right now, they're talking Tom Cruise as Iron Man because he had been in talks to play Iron Man years ago. Leonardo DiCaprio as Spider-Man because the James Cameron script. Those, just an absolute ton of rumors about that. And I'm taking all of that with a grain of salt because it's starting to seem like Doctor Strange is no longer a Doctor Strange movie in so much as Boba Fett. So I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping that they do make it a Doctor Strange movie. And I think the thing I loved about the Hawkeye series is that it was back down to a personal story. It was back down to street level. It wasn't galactic and multiversal and all this stuff. And those are fine, but we're getting a lot of that now. I'd like an Avengers movie that doesn't involve every Avenger ever made. I'd like to see a team again, that type of thing. They don't, just because you bring it up to these high stakes doesn't mean you can't bring it back down and do a more personal story in some aspect. Just my thought on that. So hopefully they don't go too crazy on it. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the Legend of Vox Machina. And we're going to bring Kyle in just a minute. But if you are not following this, this is, of course, the animated series based on the Critical Role um, live play D&D sessions with Matt Mercer and Travis Willingham, Sam Riegel, Marcia Ray, Laura Bailey. Am I going to remember all of them? Ashley Johnson and Liam O'Brien. Yeah, I think I got them all. And they've been playing since, I mean, they're friends and voice actors who play together. You've probably heard these guys' voices in just about any one of them, at least, is probably in every animated thing you've watched. You know, you probably can find one of them. But they started doing this at home, and then they got hooked up with Geek and Sundry and started doing it there, and then got their own channels and broke off on their own. They are now currently in their third campaign, but the first one was about a group called Vox Machina, and that's why we've got Legend of Vox Machina, and it's become an incredibly popular show. When they did a Kickstarter with the idea that they would do one long episode. The Kickstarter went so well that it's now the highest grossing Kickstarter ever. And they ended up making a 12 episode series that Amazon Prime then jumped in on too. And they added other actors like David Tennant and Gina Torres and just, some really great voice actors and stuff as well. And it just kind of keeps rolling along. Well, they dropped the first 3 episodes week before last on Friday. And the first 2 episodes were what they originally had planned to do. And that was basically an introduction to the team. That's got David Tennant in it. And there's they're having to fight a creature. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's well worth checking out. The 3rd episode introduces the Briarwoods. And the Briarwoods was a huge part of the first campaign series. Now, you don't have to have watched the campaigns. It's just another layer. So if you've already watched them, or at least you're familiar with the characters, you get that extra thing, just like you do when you watch a Marvel movie. If you're a reader of the comics, then you get that little extra bonus. But they do it in such a way that if you don't know that stuff, you're still okay. Well, the next 3 episodes that we got on Friday continue the Briarwood saga, which is going to be a big chunk of this season. And this has to do with Taliesin Jaffe, the one member names I did forget to mention. Taliesin Jaffe's character of Percival, who is, again, anybody who's a D&D fan who hasn't watched the campaigns, they started playing Pathfinder, then switched to D&D when 5e came out. Now, that's important with the character of Percy, because Percy's a gunslinger, which exists in Pathfinder and doesn't exist in Dungeons and Dragons. So Matt had to do some DM magic to make the character work. Just kind of an interesting side note there. But basically, we're following Percival, who lost his land when they were attacked by a pair of vampires. And that's what this storyline involves, is Percy going home with Vox Machina to try to save his old land and to stop the Briarwoods. And every time you see Percy kind of go super dark, it's part of that. It's that. So, all right, let's bring Kyle in if he's ready, and we can talk about Vox Machina. So what was your thought on the latest 3 episodes?
So overall on this show, I've got a fundamental problem.
What's that?
I like to know they're playing D&D.
Okay.
If I didn't know that and I just picked up Legend of Vox Machina, I would have no idea.
Right.
There is no element of this is a D&D story, which frustrates me, because I think that knowledge would give some clarity to the last 3 episodes. So, the last 3 episodes have been primarily Briarwood battles, right? Like it's them getting to what's it called? Whitestone,
Yeah.
which is where Percy's from, and getting ready and getting geared up to take on these vampires.
Oh, throw the spoiler thing up, please.
Oh, yeah, we should probably do that because I'm not going to not spoil it.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah, and now it can be right over my head.
Yep, that'll cover that stupid poison nut. Go
on. No, so I wish there was a little more in terms of the storytelling of this is how it's a D&D campaign.
Okay.
This is just an animated series. That being said, the first 2 episodes felt like a traditional recap of a D&D campaign, right? They didn't give too much time to the first 2 episodes. They're fighting a blue dragon.
Yeah.
Didn't give a ton of time to character development of the blue dragon or, the guy who was controlling the blue dragon. They just kind of dealt with it, dispatched with it, and moved on. And if you've ever told the story of your D&D campaign to somebody, it's, well, and then we came up against a blue dragon and we killed it. Okay, great. Like, you don't say, and his mother was this, and his, you don't bother with that.
Yeah.
So it felt like more of a recap of a D&D campaign. And now we're getting into this more in-depth storytelling, which is great. But it doesn't give me, the decision-making doesn't always make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has to do with the way it's presented in a tabletop RPG format. Right? So it frustrates me in some regard. I like the character of the Briarwoods as a antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I like their ability set as antagonists. It's made for a very gory, very brutal show. But the last 3 episodes have felt more like an anime to me than a D&D campaign.
Okay. But I could see that also being what they want to do because they're trying to appeal to a general audience.
Oh, sure. But like, I don't know that you could do it any other way. I don't know that it's possible, right? Will Wheaton's Tabletop Show did a version of it, but I don't know that it was necessarily successful.
Yeah.
What I would like, and I think what would solve it for me, is a read along or a handbook, kind of some character sheet kind of things that I could pull up on my phone while I'm watching the show and go, okay, Percy, this is what that means when Percy puts on that mask.
Yeah.
This is what he's unlocking here. This is why sometimes his gun doesn't fire. This is why, this is what the loot does for I'm gonna forget Scanlan. For Scanlan. This is the kind of mage that Pike is. Okay, that gives me the information I need to know to understand the D&D decisions.
Right.
I don't think you could tell the story any other way. And I think they're doing a phenomenal job of storytelling. But I'm interested. I'm into Critical Role because I'm into D&D, not because I'm into cartoon storytelling.
Right. And by the way, Pike's a cleric.
Well, cleric, mage, spellcaster.
Spellcaster and mage, yes. Cleric is a holy person, and that's important.
But she does worship a deity that gives her power. So she's sort of in between a straight up mage and a cleric, which I think is one of those things that the lines are a little blurrier in Pathfinder than they are in D&D.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned it with Percy, right? There's some blurred lines into what class these characters are.
Yes.
So she is certainly a cleric in D&D, but I think in the in the Pathfinder lore, she's kind of in the middle.
And they've kind of done something like that. Matt Mercer has been working with Wizards of the Coast to create books based on source books and campaign books based in this world. So all of his unique things that he has done are becoming playable in the D&D realm.
Right.
So something like Percy, or there's he's created some new classes, or at least subclasses, stuff like that are getting worked in.
Right. Like Grog, the character Grog, while he is just a tank of a character, couldn't exist purely in D&D. There's just no class for it.
He's a
You have to
barbarian.
have
He's a barbarian.
Right, but like he's a barbarian with certain other traits that don't exist, that didn't exist, I would say, prior to say D&D 5e.2. Which is where some of these classes are starting to come in. So, like, it's one of those things is that you're getting a lot closer to these characters in actual play, which I love.
Yeah.
But no, I've quite liked the use of like demon dogs and ghost goblins and wraiths and things like that by the Briarwoods as slowdown mechanisms for the campaign.
Yep.
And
we got the side quest of having to break somebody out of prison. So
we got the side quest of having to go buy gear that you later throw off a cliff.
Yes.
Which, by the way, if you've never played Dungeons and Dragons, or really any type of tabletop RPG, that was the realest moment in the whole show.
Yes.
You could afford one little bottle of holy water and you're going to fight a vampire or a demon, and you trip and fall and your bottle of holy water goes off a cliff.
Yep. That's called an epic fail roll. That's when you roll a 1.
The realest of the real.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That one hurt. So, but I think the show is really progressing well. I can't wait to see how they wrap up the Briarwood thing and what other stories they're going to do. If this is enticing you to get into Critical Role, they've just started a 3rd campaign. They are 12 episodes in. They're all available on YouTube on the Critical Role channel. 13 plays on Thursday night. They take 1 week a month off. And other than that, they play every Thursday night at the same time. If you want to do a sampler of it, check out the Search for Grog. It's these characters, but after the main campaign, they got together and did a live audience game, which is so much fun. That's what got me hooked, was watching the Search for Grog. So it's these characters, but what happens to them later on. So there are a little bit of spoilers in it, but it is just such a fun campaign. And these guys are all good friends, and they have a lot of fun. The guy that voices Scanlan, Sam Riegel, his purpose in life is to make life hell for Matt Mercer. And he does it with extravagance.
Yeah. If you've never played a bard in a tabletop RPG campaign, what are you even doing with your life? Like,
my first character was a bard, and my DM was Matt Hawkins from Top Cow, and I messed with him so much.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
Guys, being a bard is your license to be chaotic neutral. Like, you've all seen the grid, breakdown from lawful good to chaotic evil.
Yeah.
Being a bard gives you an excuse to play that bottom row. Even if you're a good guy, it gives you an excuse to play that bottom row. And the expressions you can give to a game master just by being a jerk. Some of the most fun.
Matt had created a map and had an actual cartographer build it for this city that he was, or this thing. And I came up with my character, and I needed to have a place that he came from, so I created the name Sylve. And Matt went, huh, well, I've got Silverkeep. How about I just have the map change to be Sylvekeep? Like, that works. And then afterwards he goes, so where did you come up with the name Sylve? I went, oh, it's just Elvis backwards.
Yeah.
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 Perfect for a bard.
And can I tell you, we kind of mentioned him earlier, Black Chrysanthemum.
Uh-huh.
Played a campaign once where I was basically playing Black Chrysanthemum. I knew the character was coming, and so I rolled up a character in a Star Wars campaign that was Black Chrysanthemum. And the number of things I killed that I wasn't supposed to by tearing their limbs off or landing a spaceship on top of them. Just, we'd play for 45 minutes and the game master would be like, okay, look, we have to stop. Kyle has killed everything that I built for this game. Really? Yeah.
Yeah. It's been
I can throw puzzles at you, but the way he's rolling, it's not going to matter. You know, but that's the other thing, right? About Vox Machina why I would like to see more of the D&D play.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that happen, like in episode 5 or 6, where they can't get through the door and they're trying to pick the lock and they're trying to bash it down. And then Scanlan's foot tries to kick it open. And then Percy falls out of a window.
Yeah.
I would like people to know that this is not done for comedy. This is poor rolling.
Yes. Which is a tradition with Vox Machina. There, if you look up their YouTube or their Wikipedia page, there is the door boss, is what they refer to it as, and they're constantly having a problem opening doors. It's really, really bad for them.
Right. I mean, and I've played campaigns where we need to get through this door to continue, and we just keep whiffing on whatever the puzzle is that goes into unlocking the door, or door picking, or lock picking, or breaking the door down. Like, you have that. That's part of the game, and to have it not be played out that way makes it seem like it's just done for comedy.
Yeah.
When in fact it's super not, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, all right. I think we're going to wrap up Vox Machina there, because we're going to talk about them again next week when with 3 more episodes, where Reacher dropped all 8 episodes at once. So I want to give Reacher a good amount of time. So let's thank you, Kyle, for joining us. Go ahead and take our break real quick, and we will come back and talk about Reacher. Be right back.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey, I had a story come to mind while I was running the commercials that I wanted to share. that I thought might be apropos for Vox Machina.
Okay.
We're playing Bloodborne. I don't know if you've ever played it. It's a D6 based RPG in a box, essentially.
All right.
We were playing with a guy named Chris, who I'm about to jump back into a campaign on. We're developing a game for a friend. And in one game, he rolled 4 in a row natural ones. In this game, those things stack, and by the third natural one, he had turned us into unholy abominations that could not compete or could not complete our mission. After he gets to roll the 4th one, which is like the saving roll. He rolls a 1, and the only thing it says in the book to do at this point is start over. So the game literally had just one line under, if you roll 4 ones in a row, start over. Total party kill on an RPG in a box. So just know that bad rolling is normal, and I think Scanlan does it a lot.
Good possibility. So, all right. Before we jump into Reacher, I do want to point out the fact that, yes, Disney dropped Book of Boba Fett season finale last night, but they also dropped the Assembled program for the behind-the-scenes look at Hawkeye. So that was fun. I got to watch that this morning. It's a good hour talking about stuff, everything from the costumes to the conversation that brought Vincent D'Onofrio back, all of that stuff. And it always amazes me, all of these big decisions and ideas, how much either Kevin Feige is personally part of making it happen or is literally the one that makes the suggestion in the first place. So, Kevin Feige is such an amazing, integral part of the whole Marvel universe that it just blows my mind. So check out Assembled, the Hawkeye behind the scenes. It's really good. Though I am kind of surprised they dropped it this week, because they could have held off for 1 week and had something for us next week. Instead, we are looking at 6 straight Wednesdays with no Marvel or DC. So no Marvel or Star Wars project. That seems kind of bad to me, doesn't it? I mean, you want people to keep subscribing to the service. The next Marvel thing is Moon Knight, March 30th. And there's no Star Wars thing until the rumored release of Kenobi in May. So you tell me nothing's ready right now? So, yeah, we're going to have 6 weeks, no Marvel and no Star Wars stuff. Hey, Richard. Now, and we're going to get, an episode of Peacemaker tonight and Peacemaker next week. Then we have no DC stuff after that for a while. We got some movies. We got Doctor Strange. But Doctor Strange is going to come out in May. So we'll have the Batman and we'll have Morbius after that too. So, yeah, we got the Batman is about the only thing that's going to drop in this 6-week period. A bit of a break is a good thing, except I got shows to do. I need content. I need, I'm going to have 2 more weeks of Vox Machina. They put all of Reacher out. It's going to be slim for a few weeks. We're going to be doing episodes about Marvel versus DC. Who's the better archer, Green Arrow or Hawkeye? That type of stuff soon. So to get us over that 6-month period or the 6-week period. All right, let's talk about Jack Reacher, or Reacher, as the series is called. Now, some of you may be familiar with the character. He was created by Lee Childs, the writer, and he's been putting out a book a year for like 2 decades or more. I mean, it's been an ongoing series, a very prolific series, and it's a very popular series. Now, it got translated or adapted into 2 movies. Both starred Tom Cruise, and you might have seen them. One was Jack Reacher, and the other was Jack Reacher Never Go Back. And if you weren't familiar with the Reacher character, you probably watched those movies and thought, oh, these are good Tom Cruise movies. They're your typical Tom Cruise movie. He's an action hero. He can kick ass. He's kind of confident, you know. But then if you have read Reacher, you notice that the big difference between Tom Cruise's take on the character and the character in the books is about 8 inches. In the books, Jack Reacher is 6'5". Nope, 9 inches, excuse me. Tom Cruise is 5'7". That'd be 5'9", 5'7". He's not big. Reacher is supposed to be intimidatingly big, like towering over people, able to get, to resolve situations without having to say a word. And we see that in this new series. They've cast Alan Richson as Reacher. And Alan is only 6'2" in real life. And like I said, I say only 6'2" because I'm 6'6". Kyle's 6'2". So, and Kyle's short. Tom Cruise wants you to think he's 5'7". Dude is 4'11" if he's a foot tall. Okay. So they cast this really big guy, and you might be familiar with Alan from the Titans series on HBO Max. He plays Hank Hall or Hawk. He was Aquaman in Smallville, and he's done a bunch of other stuff, but nothing really leading man thing. This is the key. It's not the height you have, it's how you use it. And Reacher uses his height really, really well. Now, the backstory on Reacher is he grew up an army brat, traveling from base to base a lot with his older brother. Ended up joining the service, becoming an investigator, and doing so, to the point where they put him in charge of a group, thinking that they would just fail, and he basically succeeded with a bunch of convictions and no failed convictions. I mean, he was an incredible investigator with this very strong team that he worked with. When he finally retired, he came out of the service with the idea that he has spent his entire life being told where to go, when to go, what to do. And he doesn't want to do that anymore. So he has a couple $100, like $112 in his pocket, a World War II medal, his passport, and that's about it. He's got a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. He doesn't even carry a change of clothes. When it's time to change, he goes to a thrift store or whatever and buys a new t-shirt and new jeans and stuff and changes and then goes on. So he lives a very Spartan life. And I could definitely see the value of that. But as he goes, he's recently out of the service and he's doing this. The series is based off the book The Killing Floor. And that was the first Jack Reacher novel. So this is where it begins. This is the first. They've since written some like prequel ones or some but this was the first novel. And I've read it. I watched the Tom Cruise movies, got interested, read the novels, or the first novel, and then this series came out. And I was really excited for it because I saw what Amazon Prime did with Jack Ryan, with John Krasinski as Jack Ryan, and I thought I love that. So I'm over here and I'm happy on this. I'm ready to go. Well, the character travels to a fictional city called Margrave, Georgia, and the whole idea is that His brother once told him, Jack's a Reacher. Everybody calls him Reacher. I have to remember that. Even his mother called him Reacher. Reacher was a big fan of jazz music. And his brother once found out that a jazz musician named Blind Blake had used to travel to Margrave regularly to play and actually died in Margrave. So Reacher, just having gotten out of the service, doesn't really have anything to do. So he decides, I'm going to go check out Margrave. And as he's walking into town and past, the fields and stuff on the way into town, some bodies are discovered. A body is discovered. And, this giant stranger coming from that exact same direction and makes the police want to arrest him. So this poor guy walks into town. As he's about to enter this restaurant, he sees this guy kind of bullying his girlfriend. And Reacher just turns and stares at him. And the guy's like, what? What do you want? Yeah. He tries to act tough at first. And Reacher just continues to stare at him. And you see this guy's confidence melt away to the point where he starts apologizing. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm just having a really bad day. I don't normally do that. It's never going to happen again. I'm so sorry. And he goes and opens the door for his girlfriend and apologizes to her and gets in. And it's all Reacher just looking at this guy. And that's the basis for this character, is he's got this gravitas to him that is just damn impressive. Kyle asks, have you ever used that tactic in real life? It's super effective. We got time for a quick story? I used to work at a place called Builder's Emporium. It was a hardware store. And I was working late in the paint department, which was off to the side. You'd walk in the front door, paint was off to the side, cashier, service desk, all that stuff's right in the front. I come walking down the aisle. We're getting close to closing time. And there's someone at the service desk, and the cashier at the service desk is looking really nervous. So I come down to try to figure out what's going on. This guy turns around and has a gun. Now, again, I'm 6'6", and I've just walked up on a guy with a gun. And it just looks like a 38 or a 22. I mean, it's not a big, I'm not huge. I know guns somewhat. But he's got this gun pointed at me. And I looked at him and I said, I'm as big as a goddamn bear. If you're going to shoot me, you better hope you kill me, because if not, I'm going to rip your goddamn head off. His eyes went huge and he ran out the store. I quickly grabbed the counter or the shelf next to me to kind of hold myself up, because that was kind of scary. But yes, so I have used that tactic, and it is super effective when you deliver it with a lot of confidence. When that confidence wanes, though, that's the problem. But so, yeah. All right, so Reacher goes in to get himself some breakfast. He's sitting there, and that's when the cops pull up. And we also get a good idea of how intelligent Reacher is. He's a big guy, but he's smart and he's observant. So the two cop cars come flying in the parking lot, and it's a gravel parking lot, so you hear them kind of crunch to a halt. He looks around the room and sees an old couple having breakfast, somebody with their kid. His quick assessment is that there's nobody in the restaurant that the cops would come barreling in to arrest. They're all locals. They're all non-threatening. So he immediately just puts his hands, he tucks money to pay for the breakfast under the plate, then puts his hands on the table, because he knows that the only person they could be there for is him. And sure enough, they're there for him. And it's the start of this adventure that um, it's not a perfect series. Let me say that. There's a couple things that are driven by coincidence. And they bug me a little bit. But having read the books, they're coincidence in the books too. So it's I try to let them go, but we find out the dead body. We got the spoilers on, right? We find out that there's a connection between Reacher and the dead body, which seems a little far-fetched. And they could have addressed it in the story pretty easily and knocked it away when they didn't. And then there's another connection between the chief detective and this friend on the FBI that is somehow connected to the everything going on. And that seems a little odd too, that these random connections are happening. Those two aside, I love everything else about this series. Alan Richson is awesome as Jack Reacher. He carries himself with intelligence, with this force of nature size. And they do things to make him look taller. I think they hired actors around him that are on the shorter side. They film him on up angles, stuff like that, but it's effective. They make him look really imposing. This is not a highly emotional character, but you see what gets to him. But the thing that I like the most about it is Reacher isn't a hero. He just tries to do what's right. And in doing so, and they drill that home. That's something that, that's something his mom talks about when they're kids, that his brother John wants to save the world, save everybody, and just save somebody. And Reacher just wants to do what's right. And that does come home because there are things that Reacher does that are not very heroic. There's a scene where there's two people hunting him down and he's able to turn the table on them and come up from behind. And he shoots them in the back, both of them. Now, these are two people who are clearly out to kill him. There's no doubt about it. And he had the drop on them and he killed them. The heroic thing to do would be to either drop your guns, put your hands up, or at least announce yourself so that they had the chance to turn and fight. No. These two were going to kill me. I killed them first. I like that. I like they didn't, and that's how he is in the books as well. So I like the fact that they didn't try to soften him. They kept him as this very, aggressive character when he needs to be. The cast around him are really good. And a lot of them are local Canadian people. It was filmed up in Canada. They're local Canadian actors. But Willa Fitzgerald plays Roscoe, which is the female cop that he gets involved with. Malcolm Goodwin plays Finley, the local detective who seems to be the only one that's kind of on his side. And he's from Boston, so he's an outsider. Everything else is tied to this big corporation, and just down the line, it's really good acting. And it's real good storytelling and pace, too. It's something that Prime is really good at when they do these adaptations. Krasinski's Jack Ryan series is really good like this. Titus Welliver as Harry Bosch works really well, too. And they're the type of shows that you want to binge because they're all got these little cliffhangers that you definitely need to know what's happening next, where, I mean, it feeds into that format. Now, I kind of wish they hadn't have released it all at once, because I have a feeling that it dropped on Friday. It got covered for the 8 episodes it did over the weekend. On Monday, they announced that there's going to be a second season. They already announced that. Here we are Wednesday, and we're talking about it, and that's going to be it. You know, and I think most people who've covered it have covered it earlier, have already done their shows on the weekend or on Friday or Monday. So I'm doing it later because, you know, all the shows we're trying to cover, this was the slot that made sense. And I think I might be one of the last people talking about this series because, you know, when you don't have, oh, here's the new release, here's the next episode, going along and getting 8 weeks of conversation, you lose that word of mouth. So if I'm, you know, if I come in the next day to work and, you know, I'm dragging because I stayed up until 7 a.m, which I did, to watch Reacher, then anybody I run into on that day is, wow, you look tired. Oh, I stayed up and watched Reacher. What's Reacher? It's this great new show on Amazon Prime. You ought to check it out. But am I talking about it on Saturday and Sunday? The following week? The week after that? But we talked about Book of Boba Fett for 7 straight weeks. We're talking about Peacemaker for all this time. Look how long we talked about WandaVision and how much that got attention. So from a fan point of view, I understand the love of being able to binge watch and just have the entire series dropped. But from a professional standpoint, from the guys who are making these shows be a success and get views and stuff, I don't think it works. I think they're hurting themselves by doing this. So yeah, they've gotten a second season approved and they're going to go for it. But how many after that? You know, how long does it take in between? And how many people have been talking about Jack Ryan since the 2 great seasons? There's supposed to be a third, but Krasinski's off making his movies and stuff like that. When we're going to get a third one? And nobody's really talking about it. So there's an issue with the drop them all at once format that I think hurts shows that could benefit from having it split up. I even like what they're doing with Vox Machina, bringing it back around to our earlier show, is that, yeah, they're releasing it over weeks, but they're doing 4 weeks, 3 episodes a week. So you get a nice big chunk, but you're also getting 4 weeks of talking about Vox Machina. So that's kind of maybe a happy medium, and that's Amazon Prime as well. So why they did one for Reacher and the other for Vox Machina, I don't know. But I mean, like, this whole episode today is talking about Amazon Prime material, but next week we'll talk about Vox Machina, and the week after that, we're going to run out very quickly. And then what are we talking about? I mean, I haven't watched Wheel of Time yet, which I probably should, but all right. So things I really liked about the Reacher show is, like I said, they kept the character very true to the books. I saw somebody refer to him as kind of a Mary Sue because he's big, fighter, powerful, smart. He's got all the skill set. And I've never heard of somebody referred to as a Mary Sue that was kind of the lead character, in the sense that a Mary Sue is usually somebody who doesn't have training. Ray suddenly knows how to do all that stuff with the Force, though she's never had training. Even with Grogu, They're like, yeah, he's 50 years old and he can barely do this stuff because he's forgotten what training he had, but he's 50 years old and he can, can't do half the stuff she did. So I get it from that point of view, but Reacher, military, police, I mean, just that is his training. So it doesn't seem to really fit the Mary Sue category, That's like doing a boxing movie and having this boxer, so you're following the main character who is this really good boxer and getting upset. Well, why is he such a good boxer? And the fact that he's got like a 52-3 record that he's been working his way up since he's like a teenager gets thrown out. So I think I don't think that's the case with Reacher. I think, yes, he's a bit OP for this type of story. He's got the intelligence, he's got the skills, but he also needs help. He's got he brings in both Finley and Roscoe help him, and also a former somebody who used to be in his unit when he was in the service, who's now a private detective that uses this woman named Neely, who also is an interesting character because she is the only one we know who really has a relationship with Reacher. And we see it's kind of a weird situation with him is that he never opens up, but she seems to know a little bit about him enough that we get a different side to him. She knows him really well and is a little bit like him because they trained together. They did this stuff together. So it reinforces that he can do this stuff because it's where they both came from. So I like that a lot. But the story itself, it's all about this small town that gets caught up in a very big mess, and they don't even know how caught up they are into it. But Reacher has to start putting the pieces together. And for a long time, he doesn't do it. There are mistakes that he makes and things he doesn't catch because he's human, but he eventually figures them out and puts it together for the ending. But it's a fun series. It's a lot of action. You've got some violence, you've got some blood, and you got some nudity. So it's it's a mature series, but not over the top, not where if you're watching it with your 17-year-old kid, you're going to get up and go, oh God, no, let's change that. There's a couple quick scenes, no big deal, but I look forward to seeing what they do next. My only other complaint is, besides the two convenience moments in the series, is that it felt like they could have expanded the budget a little bit. They could have given it a little more money. I'm not saying it doesn't look good, but it felt like a TV show where I have to compare it to Jack Ryan because it's the same network, it's the same concept, the same type of character in that the spy thriller military thing. Jack Ryan felt like each episode was his own little movie. This had more of a TV series feel to it. And I don't know if it's the way it was filmed or the cast or what, but I think I'd like to see them up the budget for the second season. And my personal thing is, I think the two characters of Jack Reacher and Jack Ryan have similar enough backgrounds in that I could see them crossing over. And Lee Childs has loaned his character out and has let people create stories around his character. So I could see him going, oh, you want to bring a Reacher into a Jack Ryan series? Go ahead. You can borrow him for a season, And I think that would be really neat to see those two, because then I think you'd cross them over. Everybody who liked Reacher would be like, oh, I should check out this Jack Ryan. And Jack Ryan fans would go, Oh, Reacher. Okay. So I kind of hope they do that. I don't think they will, but I did put it out there in the ether. I posted about it on social media, linking to Amazon Prime and the actors. I think it'd be fun to see the two of them interact because Jack Ryan always seems to bring in a military person in all of his adventures that helps him on it. And I think it would be neat if it was Reacher. But I highly recommend the series if you haven't watched it yet. Like I said, good acting. If you're a Smallville fan, you get the guy that played Aquaman and Lana Lang. Kristen Crux is in this as well. So it's a really fun story. It's good action. And I think this is the type of vehicle that might put Alan Richson on the map finally. So, all right, folks, that is it for today. It is Wednesday, which means that we will be followed here by the Comics Collectibles with Rex and John. I know they've got some pretty cool books lined up, including books signed by James Tynion IV, Alex Ross, and John Cassidy. So they've got some cool books lined up. Check it out. Stick around for that. I will be back tomorrow to talk about the Book of Boba Fett finale. Watch it so we can all talk about it tomorrow. Come on over, join in the conversation. See you tomorrow. Good night, everyone.